right, we're going to start out in Virginia tonight, and we'll talk with Lucy. Hey, Lucy, what have you got for us tonight?
Hi, Pastor Andrew. And first, I want to say I just finished reading my book, The Grace Message, and it was wonderful. I
Thank
bought
you.
5 copies and gave them out to friends, so I'm spreading the word.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the scripture verse I wanted to talk about is Leviticus 19:28, where it talks about we shouldn't put any marks, any piercing or marks in our bodies. And the conversation around this with a friend and I were talking about the fact that, Jesus had a mark on his thigh in the book of Revelations 19:16. The conversation was back and forth to say, well, we're not supposed to put any marks on our bodies. My position is that was under the law. But even in the Old Testament, Isaiah 49:16, behold, I have inscribed you in the palm of my hand. Does that mean that there was a mark in the Lord's hand? Revelations 14:1, where the 144,000 had a mark in their foreheads.
Right.
And then Revelations 22:4, where it says that they will see him face to face, and his name will be on their forehead. And of course, Revelations 19:16, and he had a name written on his robe and on his thigh, King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Yeah, okay. Well, you got a lot of passages there that would justify the idea of a mark on us. If there's a mark on God, if we're a mark for him, he's got us marked out, so to speak. You've recited a lot of scripture. I think at the end of the day, the simple answer is that we're not under the law. And that passage in Leviticus, Leviticus 19, verse 28, is prohibiting the idea of a tattoo. But there's a likely reason for that. You look at why God would have prohibited that for Israel, and it's because it would have been some sort of support for a pagan practice. It was not written in the law that you should get a tattoo for God's sake. So people thousands of years ago in the nation of Israel who were getting these marks on their body, they were pagan marks, and they were for a pagan purpose. And so that was the motivation behind Leviticus 19 and this prohibition. It was likely paying homage to some sort of false god or idol within a pagan religion, and the Israelites knew the one true God, and so they had no business doing that. But today, my goodness, I know people who have Leviticus 19:28 tattooed on their arm or on their shoulder or whatever, in order for people to literally come up to them and say, hey, what is that verse? And then you say, well, that's a verse that prohibits tattoos, and I've got it tattooed on my body. And then somebody does a double take, and they say, what? You've got a tattoo of the verse that prohibits tattoos? What's up with that? And it becomes a beautiful conversation piece for talking about the Old Covenant versus the New Covenant. And my goodness, it's not just about tattoos, is it? We could survey the Old Testament law and find all kinds of prohibitions. You couldn't eat pork. You couldn't eat shellfish. You couldn't send emails on Friday night or Saturday morning. The Sabbath observance was part of the law, part of the Ten Commandments even. So there's lots of prohibitions in the law, and we Christians, we've been told again and again in the New Testament, you're dead to the law, free from the law, not under the law. Christ is the end of the law for all those who believe. So we don't have to run around looking for verses in Revelation about marks on God or Old Testament passages about God's law being written on their hand or forehead or whatever. We can just simply say, I'm a new covenant believer. I'm a child of God, born again, living on this side of the cross. I'm dead to the law and not under the law, and I am free. So that's the answer to that important question. And I say it's important not because, tattoo or no tattoo, that's not that big of a deal, but it gives us a window into all kinds of other answers. You know, we got people pushing tithing today. Well, tithing is part of the law. We got people pushing uh, Sabbath observance, and that's part of the law. So we're chopped up in all these denominations today within Christianity, and people are picking and choosing and cherry picking from the book of Leviticus, and you can't do that. I mean, Paul tells us in Galatians that if you're under the law, you're under a curse because you're under everything written in the book of the law. I hope we hear that. The book of the law, the Torah, the whole thing, the first 5 books written by Moses and every regulation in it, the book of the law. You're either under it or you're not. And I know we got a bunch of jokers running around today acting all smart like they're knowledgeable and telling people that we're under some of the law. You know, they'll use words like ceremonial and moral, and they'll chop it up. You know, they're chopping up God's law into their favorite parts and saying, almost like a buffet line at the local Chinese restaurant, they're saying, I'll have the mushu pork, but I don't want the dumplings, and I'll have the General Tso's chicken, but I don't want the orange beef. And they're going down the buffet line of Leviticus and picking and choosing and discarding what they don't want and keeping what they do want. And ta-da, look, Ma, it's a whole new set of laws that I've chosen, and now we're a denomination. And that's not the way the law works. The law is an all or nothing proposition. And that's why James tells us in his epistle that if you keep the whole law and stumble at one point, then you're guilty of all of it. So the law is not multiple choice. The law is not choose your own adventure. And the law is not a buffet line at your local restaurant. The law is an all or nothing curse, and that's the way it's designed to be. So if anybody were to tell you you can't have a tattoo, you would want to bring out the other 612 laws in the Old Testament and discover that they're not obeying hundreds and hundreds of those. So what in the world are we talking about here? We don't get to cherry pick and choose our favorite regulations from the Old Testament. We're under a new covenant through Jesus Christ and the cross, which is the dividing line of human history. God ushered in a new covenant, which is better. It is founded on better promises. We have a better high priest, a better kind of forgiveness, which is once for all, and a better motivation. It's not about tablets of stone. It's about the Spirit of God Himself living within us and that new heart that we've been given by Him. We've got His desires etched on the lining of our spiritual hearts. That's New Testament Christianity. That's New Covenant living. That's the freedom of God's grace.